What are you terrified is going to come through? What are you terrified that your thoughts are going to tell you? Maybe it's you need to get out of this marriage. You need to move. You are settling. You are playing small. We have to let that voice speak to us. Otherwise, she's either going to have a tree fall in front of us, have somebody get hurt to wake us up, or even worse, she's going to stop trying. Your soul will stop trying to speak to you, and then that'll be endgame.
Hello. Thank y'all for tuning in to True Grit and Grace. I have a really special episode today. It's with one of my good friends, Elizabeth Pearson. And we decided to get in and do this episode because not only is it much needed, but also she has some exciting news coming out. And I'm like, we got to get you on the show. We just got to do this like right now. And then we had some other events happen, which we'll get into. But y'all, she's amazing. We met and instantly there was a connection and we talk all the time. And I was like, okay, we've got to record here because we got on this call and started talking. But she's a coach for women in a male dominated field and that's something I really want to talk about. She's also the author of a new book called Career Confinement: How to Free Yourself, Find Your Guides, and Seize the Fire of Inspired Work. And she's the host of an amazing podcast y'all need to check out. It's called Ascend and Transcend Podcast. And I had the honor of being her show, and she's such an incredible interviewer. She is a wife, she's a mama, she's a good friend. And Elizabeth, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
I thank you, Amberly, so much for moving mountains to get me on. I appreciate you. I appreciate your listeners giving their attention today, and I'm excited for our talk.
Well, you reached out the other day and you sent me a picture of what's going on with your hubby, and his leg looks wrapped up and
Gnarly.
kind of similar to, something I've been through. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is what happened. I'm like, what the heck happened? I'm like,
Yeah.
and he was ice skating and had a fall, but
Yeah.
you have had a lot planned. And I want to talk about so many of us, especially in the last couple of years, have maybe had these big plans or big ideas. And sometimes things don't always go as planned. I mean, yesterday I had a big tree fall down right in front of me. And
That was
and
crazy.
my it was crazy. We had these huge storms going on here right in front of me. And my default is to always be grateful. Like, I am so grateful that didn't land on me. I am
Totally.
so grateful. And then I think, okay, well, this just means there's another way around. Like
Mhm.
there's always a different way. There's always a way to get through. Sometimes we have to reroute and trust that reroute. But you have this big
Yeah.
tour coming up, like a
Yeah. Well,
big.
it was to give your listeners some background. I am an executive coach, as you said, for women, usually in ELT or C-suite level roles in male dominated fields. And most are, I mean, which fields really aren't male dominated. And over the course of about 4.5, 5 years, I've been putting together this book, and it's gone through 4 different proposals, which I'm sure you know that's painful to write proposals,
Mm-hmm.
2 different book agents that tried to sell it. It's just been this little engine that could, right? I tell people it's like I wanted to have a third child and I had to do IVF for 5 years to get this baby, right? And this baby is finally being born, and I had all of these big plans to travel to LA and New York and Chicago to support it, and this book tour, hired a fancy publicist, all of it. And we're about 3 weeks out. And last weekend, my husband, being the good father he is, took our little girls ice skating. Yes, we live in Southern California, so it was like an indoor ice rink. And just this freak accident, he fell and he broke his tibia and his fibia and his ankle and his left wrist. And so the last week has been one of the hardest weeks of both of our lives. It's been him in a lot of pain, him having surgery and being in the hospital and finally coming home, and me really kind of stepping into this new role of being this nurse. I'm really his in home care. He's pretty much solely dependent on me for everything. And have these 2 little girls as well. School started this week. got to get them there at a certain time, and I think a lot of moms probably feel mom guilt too. Like every morning I was giving my husband these, little smoothies that you buy at the grocery store. And I'm looking at the sugar on them and all the stuff. And I just start feeling really guilty. I'm like, well, I should be making fresh smoothies and I should be making him protein in the morning and I should be doing all of this. And it is Amberly, it is like a tidal wave of just stuff that needs to happen. And this little baby book has been promptly put in the corner and told
Mm,
to sit down because she's not important anymore. There are things that are actually important. But we were chatting before we came on about how we have these big plans, right?
mhm,
And then God laughs, the universe laughs and says, you know what? Right? I'm going to have that tree fall. My tree fall was literally my husband falling and being injured like I've never seen him, seeing him go
mhm,
through painful situations. I think it's also hard for men, especially men that are so strong in our lives to have to succumb to that help, and not wanting to be a burden in this and that. But what's been so wonderful is I sent you that picture and I said, oh man, I know a little bit about what you were talking about then with your accident and everything. And it just puts things into perspective. And so there's no doubt something that your listeners are going through or some big plans that they have. And we thought about what if we talked about what if those plans don't go according to your expectations and something big comes up and you have to pivot and change?
mhm, mhm. And I was like, well, I immediately, when you sent me the picture, I was like, well, there's got to be another way. Like, how about a podcast tour instead? Let's get you on the
Yeah.
show earlier. What about one book signing in Orange County or at the
Yeah.
Grove or something so you can at least like celebrate, And then I wanted to get my husband's perspective on it because he was my caretaker. And it
Yeah.
was interesting. He goes, yeah, yeah, she should do her book tour. She's got it, like she's got to get help. And I was like, I
Yeah.
know, I wish I was in California to help her,
No.
but I am just rooting for your book. And I think because of how amazing your book is, it's going to be evergreen and always something needed and wanted. And so, even if the timeline isn't exactly where you want it to be, it will be a success, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I think when you're in situations too like this, it has it's the ability, like for me, it really connected my husband and I on a deeper level, you know?
For sure. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely something, we thought we had a lot of one-on-one time during the pandemic and oh boy, is this like really just this is a whole new level, when you're the caretaker, right? When somebody is
Mm-hmm.
really dependent, he's able to now kind of scoot around on a walker a little bit, but there's no like going to get your own food. There's no going to get your own ice packs. There's no any of that stuff. And I think that it could very quickly go one of two directions. It could go to resentment
Mm-hmm.
and oh god, no, I have to do this, I've got so much on me already. Or it can bring you closer and you can say, you know what, I'm glad that I'm here and I can support you on this whole new level that frankly I didn't think we were going to get to until we were in our 80s or 90s, but now at 41 and 46 here we are. And I think it really does put into perspective, and I'll share with your listeners the day before his accident. um, I just remember feeling really disappointed. I was like, he's not pulling his weight. He's just working too much. I have way too much on my plate with the girls. I just need him to step it up. And I think I might have been a total jerk and said out loud, like, what do you even do? Like I said something like that. And then the next day, it's like the universe is like, oh, you don't think he does anything? Okay, I'll show you. Now he really can't do anything, And so you're going to see all that he did do. And
Wow.
but I'm able to kind of see that, like, okay, we were talking about how we manifest things really quickly. And even talking about this book, career confinement, there's career confinement, but there's also relationship confinement, there's parental confinement. And a lot of times when I was talking about the book, I would use as reference, what if you had a spouse who was injured or sick? That could feel like confinement. And then here we go. It's like the universe is like, yep, you want that? Here you go. And so I think it really is important, as you always, preach to your listeners too, what you focus on matters. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
here to give you a big second to that because it absolutely matters. And you speak your reality. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that, he deserved this in any way, but clearly the universe thinks that we needed this for some
Mhm.
reason.
Mhm.
Maybe it is to bring us closer together.
Mhm. Yeah, and we were, talking about before the show, you're like, "Well, what if something happened to me?" And I'm like, "Well, you really need to focus on like
Not.
being the healthiest that you can be because," and I was giving you the example of, when I was started to play softball for this celebrity softball tournament, and my husband was telling me, "You don't even know how to play. Like, oh my gosh, the ball's going to hit you in the face." And I had that healthy fear of, "Oh my gosh, what if the ball does hit me in the face?" Like, and I was so focused on the fear of what if that ball hits me in the face. And the very first night that we came home to practice, the sun was kind of going down and it was kind of hard to see. And I was focused on that ball hitting me in the face. And sure enough, it hit me in the face, bloody nose. My nose was crooked. And I literally just like scooted it over. And the
Oh
other
my
night, my daughter
gosh.
was like, "Mom, your nose is still a little bit crooked." And I'm like, "No, it's fine. It is fine."
No, it's not. It's beautiful.
But
It's perfect.
but I well, thank you, but I just went back and started focusing on, okay, ball in the mitt, but not even just that. I started focusing on my intentions, like what my
Mhm.
intentions were. I'm doing this to support the veterans. And I got out of
Yeah.
my fear and out of like just myself and started focusing on the bigger picture. And I think this is a great opportunity for, yes, you and your husband to become even closer, on this deeper
Mhm.
level that people can't understand unless you have gone through something like this. You can share about it and try to teach about it, but man, when you are in it, you get
Mhm.
it. But it's such an example for your daughters to see
Yeah.
you and how you're both um, reacting in this situation. They are,
Yeah.
I know you know this, but they're just like sponges. And
I know.
I didn't realize just how much my daughters picked up on everything that my husband and I did when I was confined to a hospital bed. And so there's just so many different learning opportunities in this situation, but it's
Yeah.
interesting how you can definitely speak on
Yeah.
confinement as far as
I know all sorts about more different kinds this time. And I think I try to put on a brave face in front of both Ryan and the girls, but I also have grace with myself where, in the morning, I allow myself to cry to and from my Starbucks run. And that's fine. And I know that, crying isn't necessarily a pity party. It's just feeling the emotions that, frankly, are suppressed most of the day when I see him
Mhm,
getting up and he's in sheer agony,
mhm,
and it's really hard to watch somebody that you love be in pain like that. And that was something that I had never thought I was going to need to experience. You never predict that. But I think that big part of it too is like, if you are the caretaker, knowing that it's okay to feel like this sucks, and
mhm,
I think we do have to keep our heads up and we got to focus on what we want. But at the same time, sometimes things are just tough situations and it's okay to call it that, like this sucks. It's going to eventually get better. And to allow the girls to feel that way too. They're disappointed, and
mhm,
um, but it's not forever. And I think what you're saying too is like minimize the time, maybe have a concentrated amount of time where you're frustrated or you're disappointed, but then try to snap out of it and keep it moving the rest of the day so that you don't draw more of those things in. And the book too, it goes through 13 different client stories. And these are super high functioning, type A overachieving women that tend to be my clients. And each one of them definitely felt trapped. They felt stuck. They felt confined at some part of their life. So it's great for readers to be able to go through and just skim a chapter and see which one you identify with, because maybe, you're somebody, there's a chapter on there about being pushed out to pasture. Maybe you're a woman in your late 50s, early 60s, and you feel like you're just like kind of being written off at work, or they're just trying to kind of get you to move on. Or maybe you're just starting out and you're a road warrior and you think, I only have 20 to 30, my 20s and my 30s to be earning years. So I need to sacrifice everything to just work, 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 work. Like that is a cage. There are so many different cages that women are in at certain points in their life. But a big step of freeing yourself from that confinement is acknowledging that you're there and how you got there.
I think that's huge. And I mean, I want to go back to what you were saying about how you allow yourself to have a little pity party and you cry and on the way
Oh, yeah.
to and from Starbucks. My husband had a hard time seeing me cry. He would freak out. And I think that when you were talking about seeing your husband in pain, I think the only thing worse than my pain is knowing that my pain is causing someone else pain. Like
Mm,
I just didn't want that. But what I learned is like I had to learn to cry. And I even cried in front of my daughters sometimes so that they would know it's okay to express your feelings. Like it sucks right now, but we're going to get
right.
unstuck. And that's one thing that you help so many other women do is to get unstuck. And I know so many people do feel stuck right now,
Oh,
stuck
yeah.
in their, I mean,
You name
in
it, we're stuck in it.
stuck in it. Yeah. I mean, actually, I just got off of a call with a client who has been stuck in this relationship and it just cycles. And
Mm,
I think a lot of times it boils down to self esteem and not feeling like you're worthy enough or good enough, in my experience with
yeah.
different clients and myself. Like it boils down to, I just don't feel like I'm enough or I'm good enough, my self esteem or and
Yeah.
so what do you say to someone who comes to you and they're like, I just feel stuck. I'm not happy with my career and what I'm doing. What can I do different?
Yeah. Well, first off, I applaud them for the acknowledgement of that. It's one thing to feel stuck and then just complain about it and go out, with your girlfriends and just have a session where everybody's complaining. Maybe you're trashing your
Mhm.
husband, you're trashing your boss, and then you go back and you just do the same thing. You don't
Yeah.
change anything. I think so. Even just acknowledging, I feel stuck. This is something that I don't feel I can tackle on my own anymore and I need support, right? So they come to you or they come to me or they go to Amazon and they buy a book that
Mhm.
maybe can be this catalyst for change. It shows that they're not apathetic to their situation. They're actually prepared to take some action. So
Mhm.
bravo for that first step.
Mhm.
The next thing I think is that you really do in the book, I talk about going on like a brain diet. I think that a lot of times we're looking at what we're putting in our bodies, but we're not looking at what we're consuming on social media, even on TV. I
Mhm.
think it doesn't have to be forever that you omit certain things, but at least at this phase, when you're trying to make big change and resistance will come in and try to hold you where you are, you need to make sure you're not friends with people who make you feel bad, friends
Mm.
who question your dreams, friends who question your capability or question your competence. You might need to say, you know what, I'm just going to take a little break and focus on me for a couple months. You don't have to, totally write them off the island yet. I think you need to look at who you're following on social media. I think people like you, Jesse Itzler, Ed Milet. I mean, there's so many wonderful people out there to follow and get inspiration and motivation from. I say clean out who you're following. Make sure it's just that. You want to like eat clean, if you will, for your brain. Also, what TV shows are you watching? Are you watching a lot of stuff like true crime and this kind of stuff? I mean, it's kind of like a car wreck. People want to watch it. Are you watching a lot of news? Just detox all of that for a while until you start to feel strong enough that it's actually possible for some things to change. And then it depends on if there are tactical things that you can do immediately, like if it is specifically work, the book has all sorts of resources and exercises you can do. But I think to set your intention to be in soul alignment with what you manifested here to do. I mean, we're all just walking around in these meat suits for a certain amount of time, right? There will never be another right now.
Mhm.
And so if you can just get whole with that and say, the intention for today is just maybe it's just be in my body and be grateful for it. Maybe it's to really listen on this next call with this person. But get that intention going so that it's your default every morning. And I think just those few tweaks you'd start to see some real changes in your physical reality.
That's so good. And you talk about soul alignment, and there are a lot of people that come to me and they're like, I don't know what my purpose is.
Yeah.
I just had a client, a new client, tell me this yesterday, and she was like, "Well, I don't know, what my true purpose is. My husband says I should do this, but this is what I do, and I feel called to do more motivational and inspirational things." And I'm like, "Well, what brings you joy?" So I'm curious to see how you find if someone comes to you and they're like, I don't know how to get into my soul alignment and I don't know what my purpose is,
Yeah.
what would you say to them?
Well, you nailed it. I mean, I think our only purpose is to experience joy and love.
Really? So I said the right thing. Oh,
Of course you did. You know it all. No, I mean it
no.
it is. I think that when we're souls, in a different dimension, we do have like a group of people and we all make an agreement. We're going to go down and this is what we want to experience this time. And as souls, there are no good or bad experiences, right? Maybe you really wanted to experience what happened, in your accident and make it this wonderful thing that really catapulted you in a certain direction to be of service to other people. And it never would have really happened without that,
Mm,
but once we're here and somebody dies or somebody gets hurt or there's hardship, all of a sudden we don't want that agreement anymore, right? We don't want to do that thing we agreed to, but we don't remember that we agreed to it. So then we curse God or the circumstances or the government or this or that. We blame everybody.
mm,
And I think if we can get back to this place that experiences aren't bad until we label them bad, right? Like there's so many philosophers and even Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, you know, maybe so, but I don't know. It's something like that. It was like, oh, maybe that's so horrible that that accident happened to you. Maybe so, but I don't know, right? Like maybe
mhm.
not,
I love
because it
that. Yeah.
actually wasn't. And so if we can just stay in that place of openness and try to find the joy even in the pain, because even pain, sometimes it hurts so good. I think our souls just want to experience intense emotion, no matter what they are. But if we can just find things that feel good, I think that that's what our soul manifested here to feel. It just wants to be happy. So, like you said, even if it's, I don't know what my purpose is, I don't think we have to figure that out, Amberly. I think we just have to keep doing things that feel good and do more of
I
those during the
agree.
day.
I agree. I totally agree. Like, I
Yeah.
think your purpose finds you, but we don't
Yeah.
know if we're sitting around going, well, I don't know what my purpose is. It's like, well, go out and start doing things that
Right.
light you up and bring you joy. And then, success leaves clues, and all of a sudden you're doing what you always dreamt of doing. And I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought up about joy and pain, because it wasn't until maybe a couple of years ago that I really experienced how, because I have a lot of listeners, that have pain, that have a nerve disease just like me, or
Ugh.
experience chronic pain. And I was teaching at this mastermind in Florida. And sometimes when I travel, it flares me up. And I'm telling you, I had the worst pain. Like, it was the worst flare up, to the kind where it comes all the way up and it like consumes my
Mm,
body. And it was so bad that after the third day of teaching, and I suited up and I showed up every day, and I did it. The third day we all ran, and, it was a long day. We ran out into the ocean, and I was sandy and dirty, and got back to my hotel room. I am, I have never shared this before, but I was in so much pain that I didn't even shower off. I
mm.
literally took my dress off, and I always wash my face and brush my teeth. I didn't even do that. I got to my hotel room and I had to go straight into the bed,
Yeah.
sand and everything, and just lay down and go to sleep. I just passed out.
Wow.
But what that experience taught me was, in that moment, how important it is to experience joy. You can have pain and joy and choose to build upon the joy, because overall I experienced so much joy and I put myself in a joyful place. And so I think it's
Yeah.
important when you're going through something like what you're going through right now, like to really put yourself around joyful people, make sure you go
Yeah.
to joyful places, do things that still light you up because it's easy to go into the, oh,
Woe is me or the
yeah,
blame. I mean,
the
that's the
blame
thing
game.
too. Oh, it is. I mean, you want to talk about a ruthless killer. The blame game is, something that you really got to watch yourself with because you're just so disempowering yourself anytime you give somebody else control over your circumstances or how you felt. You made me feel this way, or this job doesn't, value me, and all the stuff. It's like, well, you don't. Everything's a mirror. Your circumstances are exactly what you believe you deserve. And people do not like to hear that
Oh,
because,
it's so true.
but
Can
it
we just
is
shout that off
true.
the rooftops though?
Yeah.
That Elizabeth, that is so good. And you know
Yeah.
what? I had a therapist tell me that once. I was complaining about my boyfriend that I was dating back then. And she goes, well, you teach people how to treat you. Like
Right.
it is a
Yeah.
mirror,
Right.
but it's
And
hard
if
to
you want,
hear.
well, and if you want somebody to love you, right, that reflection in your mirror, that has to love you. Like you have to treat yourself well. If you want your boss to promote you, you need to feel like you really deserve it and you need to act that way. I mean, to be in a relationship, there are client stories in the book too where they were in, I don't like to label anything toxic, but they had outgrown their relationship with their partner. Maybe there had been some substance abuse, the partner wasn't ready to get help, and they would feel really disempowered. I'm like, as much as it hurts to say, you dated that person, you married that person, you decided they were a good partner to have children with and tie yourself to them forever. Because
Hmm.
I don't believe they were a completely different person and then one day decided to be an alcoholic, or one day decided to be a jerk or incompassionate or any of that. That was there. You knew on a soul level. And maybe you guys decided before you manifested, hey, this time around, we're going to be married and I'm going to be an alcoholic and you're going to have to learn this lesson or grow through it. But a lot of times that's hard for them to hear that
Hmm.
they sowed those seeds. Or even with children who have disabilities or sickness, it can seem really incompassionate to say, well, you guys all decided this. They're like, how did I manifest that? How did my child manifest this? But if you can get to a place of really truly believing everything happens for a reason, then you can cling to that faith that something good is coming from that versus it's not fair.
Yeah. So how did you get into believing that in this soul agreement that we all have this soul agreement and we come down and we live out what we've agreed to?
Yeah.
I love that you believe in like angel signs and that
Oh,
sort of thing too.
yes. All
So
of it.
how did you start to understand about the soul agreement
Yeah.
and that helps you and you teach on that?
I feel like, when you get uncomfortable in your life enough, you become a seeker. You kind of go back to school. And I had a tarot card tell me, you're going to become a student again. And I thought, a student of what? Well, I mean, we're always students, but I think it was a student of really trying to understand and find meaning in why are we here? What does it look like in between lives? I believe in reincarnation. What does it look like when you go to another realm, whether you call it heaven, whether you call it, a soul home? And so there are a few teachers that really fed that curiousness for me. There's a book called Journey of Souls, and I can't recommend it enough. I think the author is Michael Newton. He is, I think, I call him guiding lights in my book, Career Confinement. And that's the other thing about the book. It's kind of like cliff notes of all of these wonderful spiritual teachers that I've had. So you could go in and say, oh, I really like Michael Singer. I really like Eckhart Tolle or these people. And then that can be a launch pad to dive deeper into their work. So Journey of Souls talks about, it's these stories of these people who've done past life regression work with this psychologist. And they talk about what it looks like. And here's the thing, especially when you get people with near death experiences all together, they're pretty much the same. I mean, there are some real, similarities between a lot of people's um, recollections of what happens. So that book was great. I really love Rebecca Campbell. She's really great to follow. She has a book. called star seeds. So these are for people who manifest and don't really feel like this is home. Um, like I was saying to
I
Ryan,
don't know a lot about starseed, but
yeah,
I had
oh,
somebody tell me once that I was a starseed.
of
So
course you are.
explain what
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
is.
So
And
a
I was
star
like, what's a starseed?
so a star seed is usually somebody who's manifested many times. Um, and the purpose of a star seed is a little bit different, I think, than maybe a younger soul. And a star seed is here to try to help be of service by raising consciousness. So the belief is that you decide where you want to be born, who the parents are. Sometimes starseed can be really farly, they can have a huge geographic distance in between them. But a lot of times you just feel like you don't really fit, at least growing up. And you don't like small talk. You don't, there's a lot of empathic
You
qualities as
could be
well.
describing me like
I know. Well, that's why we get along.
her, like
And
that's
anybody
that's
listening to
me.
this probably is too. But I've always longed to go home. And after we moved from Chicago to California a couple years ago, I was talking to my husband. I said, I'm just really homesick. And I started crying. And he goes, well, we can go to Chicago. And I go, not that. It's not that home. It's the other home. It's this other realm. It's this other heaven or whatever you want to call it. And the purpose of the star seed not only is to like help spread consciousness and help other people along their paths. We're kind of like, um, we're like the flight attendants or the stewardesses, like on the plane, you're like helping people get to their where they want to go. Um, but at the same time, our purpose is to be okay being disconnected from our home, which can
Hmm.
feel really painful sometimes. Um, but I think with this, you open yourself up to being able to communicate. You mentioned angel signs. Like I talk to my dead grandmas all the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
they are so much more helpful to me right now than they ever were when they were alive. They send me signs, they send me messengers, they send me opportunities. And I think it's just a totally different perspective when you feel like there's not only God, there is a whole horde of people in this other dimension that are rooting for you and they're trying to comfort you while we're here.
Mm-hmm. Agree. And I always say my poor angels have worked overtime for me. They're
They love
always
it.
working overtime, man. They've been tired. In fact, yesterday I was crossing the street and with my cousin, we were going to look at a house and I was crossing the street and the mailman nearly took me out, like uh, nearly ran into me. And I was like, whoop, missed that. And my cousin was like,
Wow.
man, what is it with you? You cars are just like attracted to you like a magnet. And I've actually been hit by a car 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's why my shirt says not dead,
Not dead yet.
not dead yet. But yeah, I think, I believe in signs. My sign is a dragonfly, a feather, and your sign
Mm.
is,
It's an orange bus. It's an
and it
orange
shows
VW
up.
bus.
I saw it in your story on Instagram.
Yeah. Every time I feel really down and out, an orange bus or any sort of like old VW bus will kind of show up. One day I had a really rough day, and my daughter just randomly brought home a picture of an orange bus that she just decided to draw, or just happened to be, what was available in like the coloring station that day. And so I think some people can say, yeah, well, then your mind just looks for things that you tell it to look for. Okay, so what? So what? There's no harm in believing that you have some other entity supporting you. And
Mhm.
every chapter of the book ends with what's the harm? There is no harm in belief. It's not going to like hurt less when you're disappointed if you don't believe. I clients always tell me, I don't want to get excited about this potential job opportunity or with you now, maybe a new house. I don't want to get my hopes up. Well, why not? I say get the hopes up high as they can be, because you're so much more likely to manifest that thing that you want when your vibe is high, because then it can meet you where you are. I think if we tamper our expectations, we just rob ourselves of the joy and excitement we could be feeling even in that space until you get that answer, right? Maybe your house falls through. Well, at least you had a fun 2 weeks of like visualizing, and then something else is even better on the other side. But I think that that's really dangerous when people say, be realistic, don't get your hopes up. I
I
do not
just
subscribe
had
to
this
that at all.
conversation with my husband yesterday. I am not even kidding you. He if you could have been in our house, it's like you knew we had this conversation. So yeah, he was like, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. There's 28 beautiful trees. Like this is what I've dreamt of. Like this is amazing." And he's like, "Well, don't get your hopes up. We haven't, we got a lot. We'll see. It could fall through." And I'm like, "Okay, don't be a doggy downer. Like I want to be
Right.
excited about this." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But on the other hand, I do understand like when you let me give you an example. Um, so living with chronic pain, the kind of pain
Mhm.
that like just wants to constantly take you down. It's like tapping you on the shoulder, going, "Hey, remember me? Remember
Mhm.
me? Hey, over here, over here."
Yeah.
They have these treatments, like, and one of them is a spinal block, and it will get you out of pain. Like you have no pain. Like I had no pain for a day. Like a
Wow.
day, I had no pain. And you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm cured. This is what it's like to feel good. I feel
Mm.
so good." And then I'm walking through the market and the pain starts again. And so it's like your hopes are up and then bam, you
Boom.
come crashing down. And it can be a roller coaster, an emotional roller coaster. So, what do you say to somebody who's like, "But I've been hurt so much, I don't want to get my hopes up. How do I
Mhm.
stay open to being more
Yeah.
joyful or hopeful or having expectations?"
Well, let me ask you, Amberly. So, if you would have, instead of feeling like, oh, I'm cured, this is incredible, if you would have spent that 24 hours being like, oh, but I know it's going to come back. I know it's going to come back. I wonder when. Would that have been a good use of that 24 hours?
No, but neither would probably go into the market. I should have done something really fun. I should have done like really fun, but no, I was shopping for the family.
But it was
You know,
probably a great, it was probably still something that was impactful to you of like, I can do an everyday thing without pain. And that
yeah, it
feels great.
was. It was like, "Oh my gosh." And believe it or not, just walking, it's weird, but going to the market or the mall or
Hmm.
anything with a hard surface where I have to stand in place too long, like I've actually sat down in the middle of the floor in Target before.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did. It brought me relief. It brought me comfort.
Yeah.
It brought me hope, like, "Oh
Right.
my gosh," like, and then I had to, what I had to focus on was, well, if I could get out of pain, then there's a chance that I can do that again. So
Yeah.
that's where I put my focus, not
Yeah.
on, well, see, there's no cure. I'm in pain. Like it's so important to be
Right.
resilient what you put your focus on. And I constantly have to shift my perspective. And I think that you're really good at doing that too. And I know we're running out of time. Do you have a few
Yeah.
more minutes?
Yeah.
Because I have
Of
just a
course.
couple more things that I think
Yeah.
are really super important. I'm going to shift this whole conversation because I don't want to leave this out.
Yeah.
So I want to get to your how you work with women
Hmm.
that are mostly in a male dominated field. I've been
Yeah.
that way almost my whole ever since my fitness career. I would be the only trainer in the gym with a lot of meatheads, like big,
Yeah.
strong, tough guys. I loved it. I had a great time. I could hold my own, but it was a male dominated,
Yeah.
work environment when I was there. Um, Now being a speaker, and you and I have talked about this off air, and this is where I'm going to get deep, and I keep it real here on the show. And so in the speaking world, you and I've talked where I've been hired for events where I'm like, and I'll go to my husband. I'm like, "Well, I'm the only female speaker again." He's like, "Oh, that's awesome." I'm like, "No, we need more females." And, and
Yeah.
I just, went to my coach who happens to be a male. And I was like, "Man, I'm doing this one event and I'm the only female. And I'm speaking with some really high powered, like incredible men that I love. But they've got me like in the background, kind of shaded out in the corner. And it's like, and this speaker and this speaker." And his advice to me was, "Good. Well, let it be a little chip on your shoulder. And then you show up at that event and you bring the thunder. And so I've been like thinking, I am going to bring the thunder. So I
Yeah.
just found out at one event that I was speaking at, the owner, well, maybe I shouldn't say this. Well,
No,
anyway,
go ahead. Keep it real.
okay, I'll keep it real. I found out like the night before that they thought I was a feminist. And I was like, I told my husband, I was like, a feminist? What's feminist, honey? Like, what does he mean? They're like, because I have a mastermind for women, I was called a feminist because I'm
And
trying
that's a bad thing?
to do my best
Okay.
to, you know, to like empower women. And I'm like, but did this person see that my speaker lineup, I have one token man in my group, but yet I'm a feminist because I have one token man and it's a
Right.
group for women. And I
Yeah.
was letting it kind of get in my head. And I was like, gosh, should I message the person? Is feminist a bad thing? What would you do that in that situation? Like it, is that a bad thing? Like I was actually asking all these questions,
Yeah.
and my husband was like, no, don't message him. You just show up at that event and you like do a great job.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was one of those things. I wasn't as prepared as I usually am. I've been so like very eventful. I just gotten back from another event and I'm launching my mastermind. And I went to that event, Elizabeth. I got my first standing ovation.
Of
And
course you
that
did.
and that guy was kissing my ass afterward.
I bet.
Yeah.
And guess what? You should have said this is what a feminist looks like. Because to try to weaponize the word feminism really burns me because all feminist is that you believe everybody should be equal. It
Yeah.
isn't I'm better than you or we deserve some sort of preferential treatment. It's not man hating. It's just that we just believe in equality. That's
Yes.
all feminism is. So I think that that's wonderful that they were actually that was something that they got. It's on them if they decide to make that a negative. But I think you being, the token woman a lot of times that you felt and you're gorgeous and you're blonde and you're thin and you're Texan and you know what I mean? Like all of these things, you're just, man, you just fit right in there. But what they don't realize is that you're a unicorn, you know? And then they get you there. And then that's fine. If this is the way I get in, and if you want to dilute it down to we need to find a woman and she fits it, that's fine. But then you go there and then you own it. You know what I mean? You own the stage and you command the support and the engagement that only you can, right? And then that's a wonderful opportunity for you to be able to change their perspective. Maybe the next time they do that event, they will think to have two women or three women, or maybe they have it equal. How about that? But I think with a lot of women that come to me and really hyper male dominated fields are tech, medicine, finance,
Mhm.
insurance is actually really heavily male, even real estate. And so these women come, and a lot of times they feel like they second guess whether they should speak up in a meeting. It can be little
Oh,
things like this. And these are like C-suite level women.
really? See,
Yes.
I speak up and I'm not afraid to look stupid
Good for you.
and you know what? That's the thing. Like you have to speak up, but what do you think it takes to get more maybe comfortable in your own skin? I don't know. What does it
Yeah.
take for someone to speak up more?
Well, I think you have to start. You have to start small. I think it's also in that specific instance, I'll work with clients and we'll go through an agenda. What is it you want to say? Map out 3 talking points that you want to make sure that you hit. Give yourself a goal for that meeting to speak up 3 times. But make sure you're not just filling space, you're not just jabbering. You have
Mhm.
you sit and you wait for an opportunity to say something powerful, something that shows your intelligence and that you don't just need to talk to hear yourself speak. And I think, but
That's important.
preparation is everything. Make sure that if you have a one-on-one with your boss coming up, I always tell people to send an agenda. And they're like, well, they're just casual conversations. Nope. Ask for reoccurring weekly calls. And I want you to send an agenda 24 to 48 hours prior about what it is you want to cover. And then you let them have an opportunity to speak as well for whatever wins or obstacles they see are areas of improvement. So you actually invite the criticism in, right? But it's
Mhm.
really about taking charge of the situation, not waiting to be reactive and letting somebody else dictate how that meeting is going to go for you. You have to decide how it's going to go and then make a plan and then work the plan.
Well, what do you tell someone who is maybe really nervous about it to do?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's really great to tap. If anybody's familiar with emotional frequency technique, I think is what it's called, EFT tapping. It's a great. It can be 5 minutes, it can be 8 minutes, and you actually go through acupressure points on your body. Nick Oranger has a wonderful app that has all sorts of tapping, like
And that's
little
been
mini
around
meditation.
forever. Like I
Yes, and
had
it works.
someone do tapping with me. Oh my goodness, years ago, probably 20 years ago. And I was like, what is this? But now it's like, especially I think with
Oh
social
yeah,
media, so many people have heard about it.
yeah.
But do you do tapping?
I do. I mean,
You
look on
do.
Instagram too and just hashtag tapping or EFT and look, and there will be somebody who will do a reel, which is 5 minutes long or something that will show you. But tapping is something that has really helped. It's one of the only ways to overcome your subconscious mind and
Mm,
subconscious programming that is telling you some a-hole probably told you one day what you said in that meeting was stupid. And your
mm,
brain took a snapshot of that and said, okay, now when I speak up in meetings, it's stupid. So I need to
mm,
watch that. Our survival brain is trying to
mhm.
protect us. But that's not the case anymore. But sometimes we need something to override that programming. And that's a really great way to do it.
That's so good. I am going to
Yeah.
tell one of my clients that. That is good.
Yes.
I want to get into that more because what I do when I get nervous is I do push ups
That's
and
great.
breathe more. But like at this last event, I was sitting and they had me seated at this like speaker table in the very front. And I'm used to at in person events being kind of off to the side or backstage or even in the back of the room and walking up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm here in the front and
Yeah.
I can't do my push-ups. And I was starting to feel like the adrenaline going and everything. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do push-ups. What am I going to
Yeah.
do? Like I do push-ups even if I'm doing a virtual talk and I'm here in my office, I'm
Wow.
down doing push-ups and that helps. So, but then also if I'm there, would I start just like
Well,
tapping?
you can very kind of inconspicuously tap the side of your hand
Okay,
or
that's
another
good.
acupressure point. You could just sit there and hold kind of the webbing in between your thumb and your
Oh,
forefinger.
to get you
Press on
more
that
like,
gently. It is an automatic, I think, nervous system release in some way. So there are different little pressure points. I think there's a spot on your knee. If you had your legs crossed, that you could
oh,
even press on that. Listen, even if it's placebo, who knows? It still feels like you're doing something. And anytime you
mm-hmm.
feel like you're doing something, that survival brain that wants to tell you that this is something to be fearful of, you can say, I'm just really excited. I am
Yeah.
really excited to get on that stage and I'm going to do a few little things. You can make a new routine
Yeah.
and go in and know that there are no mistakes. So no matter what happens on that stage, it's for your higher good.
Oh, I love that. It's just a whole different way of looking at things.
Yeah.
Okay, so I could seriously talk to
I
you
know, me too.
all day. I adore you. So 13 different big like lessons
Yeah.
in the book.
Yep.
And what do you think is the most in thing that's the common that people come up to you, women come to ask you for advice on, the most common thing that they are frustrated with or they have problems with, they need, like, what do I do?
I think they just have a lack of clarity. And that can be in so many different areas of their life. And the first thing I tell them to do is to tap into their spiritual board of advisors. I feel like you have to know that there is a whole crew and you have to start talking to them, your angels. You
Mm,
have to start asking for signs. You have to have something override your rational brain that says, we're just here alone. We are not. We are all connected. We are one consciousness. And we are designed to seek support. It doesn't have to be from somebody on this physical plane. They are very active and they can absolutely help you. So
mm,
ask for clarity in some area of your life, ask for a specific sign, and then focus on finding it like a scavenger hunt and watch. And that opens up a whole new world for you, Amberly.
I love that. So I would think that, if you're numbing out with either, scrolling through social media or alcohol or
Mhm.
drugs, when you're stressed out, you aren't present enough to see those signs.
Right. And I think knowing when you're numbing and knowing that that is a symptom of some real dis-ease, some restlessness in your life, workaholics as well, people who are just
Mhm.
constantly on the go, you are numbing something. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't say meditation doesn't work for me. I don't like to meditate. I'm like, what are you terrified is going to come through? What are you terrified that your thoughts are going to tell you? Maybe it's you need to get out of this marriage. You need to move. You are settling. You are playing small. We have to let that voice speak to us. Otherwise, she's either going to have a tree fall in front of us, have somebody get hurt to wake us up, or even worse, she's going to stop trying. Your
Mhm.
soul will stop trying to speak to you, and then that'll be endgame.
Wow, that's powerful. That is powerful. I want to read your entire book. I'm so excited for you. Tell people the best way to get your book.
Yeah. So it's on Amazon, everybody's favorite shopping platform, on September 13th. And you can listen. I painfully recorded an Audible. I'm going to apologize for any trip ups that I do in it. But you can get an Audible
So
if you
you
like
already
to.
recorded your Audible.
I did. Yeah.
That's
Um,
amazing. You must have an incredible publisher.
yeah, it was good. I'm an Audible listener. I love
I
podcasts and
like Audible
Audibles.
too. Yeah.
So when I'm working out, I like to listen to a book. And so I wanted to make it available to women and men who are busy and they just want to listen to it in the car or they read at night and it puts them to sleep right away. So the Audible and hardcover are available and the ebook are all available on Amazon September 13th.
So excited, y'all. Go check out her book. But also, if you want to learn more about her, listen to her podcast. She is one of these podcasters that is so good at what she does, the questions that she asked, and the detail and everything that she puts into her podcast. So go check out her podcast, which is Ascend and Transcend. Um, and tell us your website and
Yep.
your where you hang out most. Is it mostly on
Yeah.
Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram is just coach.elizabeth.pearson and elizabethpearson.com is the website. There's also like sorts of free content. I love putting out free content videos. Some of these exercises to tune into your angel signs are all there on YouTube and stuff like that. So just go check it out and get the freebies.
Yeah. And yes, thank you so much for being on the show. And I am rooting for you that you will like maybe do
I need it.
one book signing,
I
one.
appreciate it, girl. I'm gonna try. You've inspired me. Even the words of your husband ring in my ears. Just get out there, just do something, even if it's close to home. I'm gonna try to give this book the love, but I'm also gonna tag you and say I'm just gonna have the grace with myself and with whatever's unraveling is all, what's the best for me, even if I don't have to understand it right now.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes when we're going through those hard situations, it's hard to imagine that there is something so good, like a blessing that's
Yeah.
coming, but there always is like something just a huge blessing that you could never imagine until you get through that situation. So
Yep.
I'm rooting for you. You
Thank you.
guys, all the information is in the show notes. If you're listening on your favorite, whatever it's Spotify, iTunes, whatever, or you're watching on YouTube, take a screenshot and share it and tag me and Elizabeth. And when I see that, and our handles are in the show notes as well. When I see that, I share it back. Let's spread the love. Let's empower each other
Thank
to find
you.
more joy.
Yes.
And yes, Elizabeth, I am so excited for you. Congratulations on your new book. And thank
Thank
you
you.
with everything that you have going on for taking the time to be on the show.
Yeah. You're one of the most generous people I've ever met. And I appreciate you and I appreciate your listeners. And I know there's going to be a lot of love going around. So thanks in advance.
Thank you. And y'all, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week.